I smelled burnt espresso. The machine whirred in the dark. It was 2:14 a.m. Damon never drank coffee this late. I stepped into the hallway. His voice stopped me cold. She won't see it coming. By next week, I'll control everything. My toes curled on the freezing tile. My heart pounded like a drum. He was talking to someone, about me, about our startup, my startup. And he was planning something final. Where are you listening from tonight? Hit subscribe if you believe betrayal should never go unpunished. I grew up above a dim sum shop. Steam filled our tiny kitchen every morning. My parents didn't speak English well, but numbers. They trusted those. They taught me how to count cash before I could spell my name. I was their only child. The one who'd never need to knead dough or chase after deliveries. The one who'd build something digital. I launched Carelytics out of desperation and grit. An AI dashboard that flagged at-risk patients before doctors missed them. Hospitals called it futuristic. Investors called it scalable. I called it mine. Damon entered 6 months later. Tall, clean-cut, perfect LinkedIn energy. He volunteered to help with branding, then fundraising, then everything. He knew how to charm boardrooms, how to shake hands, smile disappear quietly after. And I was tired. He made things feel easier. And I let him in. Too far in. Now we shared an apartment in Palo Alto. Open floor plan, all white, air too quiet. The morning after I overheard him, Damon walked in like a rom-com hero. Disheveled hair, that crooked grin. "You're up early," he said, reaching for a glass. I couldn't sleep. He poured orange juice, the scent sharp. "You want to run through the pitch for Singapore. I already did." He raised a brow. Without me, I didn't blink. I had to make sure my numbers were right. His smile twitched. Just a flicker. "Then you know I've got this right." Pause. "I know," I said softly. "You always say that." His fingers drummed the counter. I watched him walk away. Later I texted Lena. Urgent. Need eyes on Damon. Hamilton Cafe. She replied in seconds 12 sharp. And bring receipts. The cafe smelled like toasted oat milk and crushed deadlines. Lena wore dark jeans, no makeup, fire in her eyes. "You look like hell," she said, sitting down. "Didn't sleep." "I can tell. Talk." I told her what I heard, what I felt, the call, the tone, the silence. Lena didn't interrupt. She tapped her nail against the ceramic cup, then leaned in. "You think he's going behind your back, I know it. Can you prove it?" Pause. "Not yet." She exhaled. "Then get me a reason to go full dragon." We both laughed, but it felt hollow. "He's smart, Nat, but not smarter than scared you." My chest tightened. "I'm scared." "Good," she said, smiling. "Fear keeps you dangerous." That night Damon booked our favorite restaurant. Sorella, candlelight, crushed velvet booths. The food tasted like cardboard. He reached across the table. His hand was warm, his voice syrupy. "You okay?" I nodded, but inside I was already gone. I grew up above a dim sum shop. Every morning steam rose through the floorboards. The smell of soy garlic and fresh rice dough clung to our walls. I used to wake up to the clatter of metal trays, and my father's voice shouting orders in Cantonese. Warmth, chaos, home. My parents barely spoke English, but they trusted numbers. They believed in effort, and they believed in me. They gave up everything so I could chase something bigger. Carelytics wasn't born in a garage. It was born in silence. In a corner of my dorm, lit by the glow of my laptop, I coded until my fingers ached, skipped meals, pasted sticky notes across the walls with goals written in red ink. Detect faster, prevent early, save one more life. The first hospital pilot nearly killed me with stress, but it worked. Then came the angel investors, the accelerators, the press, the pressure. And then came Damon. At first, just a marketing consultant. He had perfect posture, great teeth. That I know what I'm doing handshake. I was skeptical, but he listened. He brought takeout when I forgot to eat. He asked questions about my parents, my past. He made things easier, and eventually I let him in. Too far in, now he was my fiancé, and technically co-founder. We shared an apartment in Palo Alto. All white counters, smooth glass. The kind of place that felt clean but never truly warm. The morning after I overheard him whispering, Damon walked in like nothing was wrong. Hair still damp, button down crisp. "You're up early," he said, reaching for a glass. I couldn't sleep. He poured orange juice. The scent hit sharp and sour. "You want to run through the pitch for Singapore? I already did." He looked surprised. Without me, I had to make sure my numbers were right. A pause. Just long enough to notice the twitch in his jaw. Then he smiled. Too easily. "You know I've got this right. You always say that." I watched him sip slowly, watched his eyes avoid mine. Later, I met Lena at our usual spot. The cafe buzzed with low music and muted keyboards. Lena never dressed to impress, but she always looked like she could end someone's career by lunch. "You look like hell," she said, sitting down. "Didn't sleep." "Obviously. Talk." I told her everything, word for word. What I heard, what I felt. My hands shook while I spoke. The words tasted bitter. Lena leaned forward, eyes locked on mine. "You sure?" "I'm sure." "Can you prove it?" Pause. "Not yet. Then you need to." I swallowed hard. "I'm scared, Lena." She didn't flinch. "Good," she said. "Fear keeps you dangerous." That night, Damon booked Sorella, our special place. Velvet booths, low candlelight. He ordered for me. Always did. Said it was romantic. I used to think so. Now it felt like control. He reached across the table. His hand was warm, his eyes soft. "You okay?" I nodded. But something inside me had shifted. And I knew. He felt it too. I borrowed Damon's laptop that morning. Mine was syncing files, slow, glitchy. He was in the shower humming something off key. I just needed to check one doc. One quick download. The laptop unlocked with his usual password. Our anniversary date. Too easy. The screen lit up with emails. Chrome still open. Out of habit, I clicked the first tab. Gmail. A draft window was open. No subject. No recipient. Just a message. I leaned in hard, already tight. She's hesitant about signing full transfer pre-IPO, but she will. She always folds under pressure. Especially if I use the wedding. I froze. My chest locked up. The words blurred. Wedding, transfer, folds. He was talking about me, about pressuring me into signing something. I scrolled. The rest was just numbers, legal lingo, something about cap table simplification. My palms went cold. I hit print, but the printer light blinked red. Out of paper, I grabbed my phone, snapped a photo, hands trembling. Just then the shower stopped. Footsteps. I slammed the laptop shut, heart racing. Damon stepped into the room, towel around his waist, water dripping from his collarbone. "Need something?" I smiled. "Thin, fragile. Just borrowed your laptop." Mine was lagging. He nodded, too quickly. Then grabbed it from the table, pressing the lid tighter than needed. "Next time, ask." My throat went dry. I thought we shared everything. He paused, then laughed. That easy, casual laugh I'd once loved. "Of course, I'm just tired." But his eyes didn't match his voice. Something flickered behind them, a sliver of calculation. Outside, a leaf blower roared to life. Inside, silence. My heart beat against my ribs. I walked away first, pretending I wasn't shaking, pretending nothing had changed, but it had. Everything had. 2 days later, Damon said he had a lunch meeting. Old friend from undergrad. He shrugged, buttoning his shirt. No big deal. But he wore cologne, the expensive one he saved for investor dinners, and he packed his presentation clicker. I smiled and nodded. Have fun. But something inside me buzzed tight and sharp. I waited 15 minutes after he left, then grabbed my coat. I knew where he'd go. There's only one private lunch spot near Sand Hill where real meetings happen, the kind with folded napkins and silent servers. I waited in the lot, watched his Tesla pull up. He stepped out with that confident sway in his walk. A second man followed, gray suit, balding, familiar. Eric DeLeon, managing partner of Halcyon Capital. We'd pitched him 6 months ago. He'd passed. Said our tech was too founder-dependent. I lowered myself in my seat, watched them disappear through the glass doors. My fingers itched. I grabbed my phone, texted Lena. "He's with Halcyon." "Didn't tell me," she replied instantly. "Get proof." I waited 20 minutes, then slipped inside. The hostess blinked. "Reservation name Wells," I said, smiling. I'm late, she pointed. Corner booth. Far end. I moved quickly, ducking behind a column. Their voices floated through the room. I can push the paperwork by next week, Damon was saying. She won't stall if I frame it as streamlining before the wedding. I couldn't breathe. Eric replied. And your shares would consolidate at what ratio? Damon tapped something. I crept closer, just far enough to see his iPad. He was showing a new cap table. My name wasn't on it, not even as a founder. I snapped a photo. Flash off. Then another. My fingers felt numb. I turned, walked out, fast, heart pounding. My mouth tasted like metal. Once inside my car, I stared at the pictures. Then I hit send. To Lena. She called before the message finished sending. Tell me you got a clear shot. I did. A long pause. Then good girl. I closed my eyes, but sleep wouldn't come that night. Only rage. And something else. Resolve. The next morning, I made breakfast. Eggs, toast, blueberries, normal. Damon strolled in like nothing was unraveling. Smells amazing, he said, kissing my cheek. I smiled. Barely. We need to talk about the investor agreement, I said, sliding him a copy. He blinked, then chuckled. Babe, not before coffee. I'm serious, he looked up. Eyes sharper now. What's this about? There are new clauses in the draft. Ones I never approved. He grabbed his mug, sipped slowly, avoided eye contact. Legal cleaned it up for clarity, he said casually. It's all standard, I stared. Standard doesn't delete my name. He set the mug down too hard. You're being paranoid. Silence. Sharp, cold. I forced my voice to stay level. I'm not signing anything else until Lena sees it. He smiled. Tight, sure. Get your lawyer girlfriend involved. That word girlfriend dripped with venom. She's our general counsel. He stood. Well, maybe she should stop stirring drama and focus on the launch. I didn't respond. He grabbed his keys and left without a goodbye. The door slammed. I flinched. The apartment fell silent, except for the slow drip of the kitchen faucet. Tick, tick, tick. I sat there, heart pounding, toast untouched. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I opened the message. If you want to keep your company, freeze the deal. Now, before it's too late. My stomach dropped. No name, no context. Just that. I read it again and again. My fingers trembled. Someone new, someone watching from the outside. Or worse, on the inside. I forwarded it to Lena. Do you think this is real? Her reply came seconds later. Yes, and it means we're running out of time. I looked around our perfect white kitchen. Sunlight through the window, a breeze shifting the curtains, and under it all panic, pure and rising. That night I couldn't sleep. Again, I sat in the study lights, dim documents spread like a storm across the floor. Pitch decks, cap tables, funding agreements, page after page, line after line. My eyes burned. Then I saw it. Section 12.3 Consent Requirement for Transfer of Controlling Interest. Buried in legalese. One sentence. All transfer actions require dual written consent from both registered founders. I read it twice. Then again, my heart kicked. We were both still legally listed, which meant he couldn't finalize the deal without my sign-off. Not yet. Not if I said no. I grabbed my phone, called Lena. She picked up after one ring. You found it, yes, I whispered. Section 12. I still have veto power. She was silent for half a beat. Then, good girl. My throat tightened. Can we use it? Hell yes. It's our opening. But won't he see it coming? Lena snorted. No. He thinks you're still in love. I closed my eyes, felt the ache behind them. He's wrong, I said. My voice cracked. But I need this clean. No mess. No blood. We do it legal, tactical, quiet. Pause. He's planning a press event, right? I nodded. 3 days from now. He wants to announce the funding at our engagement party. She laughed. Then we give him a party he'll never forget. I exhaled. Shaky, but solid. Lena's voice steadied me. We draft a freeze letter tonight. I'll file it in the morning. Will it stop him? Yes, she said. It'll stall everything. The money, the shares, he can't touch a cent. Outside, wind scraped the windows. Inside, everything felt still. I stared at my reflection in the glass. Dark eyes, bare skin. Tired, but alive. Let's do it, I whispered. Lena replied without hesitation. Send me the documents. We start now. I gathered the files. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from clarity. I wasn't trapped. Not yet. I still had power. And I was finally ready to use it. The next evening, Damon came home with champagne. I thought we deserved something special, he said, pulling 2 flutes from the cabinet. His smile was soft, warm, rehearsed. I watched him open the bottle. The pop startled me. He poured, handed me a glass. To us, he said, raising his. And the next chapter, the bubbles fizzed between us. I didn't move, my fingers curled around the stem, but I didn't drink. You okay? He asked. I'm thinking, I said, about the call I had with Lena, about the freeze letter already waiting for my signature, and about Damon, the man who used to bring me hot noodles on coding nights, tucking my hair behind my ears, who once said you don't need to be louder, you just need to be right. Then another memory. 2 months ago, he snapped at me during a meeting. You're too emotional, Nat. Let me handle it. The silence afterward was louder than the insult. Now he leaned closer. You're scaring me a little, he joked. What's going on in that head? I looked at him, really looked, and saw nothing I trusted. Not anymore. I set the glass down. I used to think love meant safety, I said quietly. Like a wall between me and the world. He tilted his head. And now it feels like the knife that got in because I let my guard down. He said nothing, but his jaw clenched. I stood up, walked to the study, closed the door, then signed the freeze letter with a firm hand. No hesitation, no fear. It was done. The next morning, I acted like nothing happened. I brewed coffee, fed the sourdough starter, even complimented Damon's cologne. He seemed relieved. Too relieved. We're back to normal, he said, kissing the top of my head. His lips lingered, but I felt nothing. Inside, I was miles ahead of him. By 10 a.m., Lena had filed the freeze letter. The moment the VC firm received it, their legal team would halt everything. No transfers, no signatures, no funding. I kept the confirmation email in a locked folder, titled Backup Wedding Photos. Damon spent the day on calls. I watched him pace the balcony laptop balanced on one palm. He laughed louder than usual, sold harder, like a man chasing a wind before the ground vanished. At lunch, he poked his head into the kitchen. Want to try the caterer tonight? I nodded. Sure. He smiled. Too wide. We're almost there, babe. I forced a grin. Almost. That evening, we sat across a white linen table, tasting mini crab cakes and champagne. He held my hand, talked about honeymoon spots, Maui, or something more private. I shrugged. Maui's fine. Are you okay? He asked. You've been quiet lately. I paused, then sighed. I guess I'm overwhelmed. Everything's moving fast. He squeezed my fingers. Good fast, though. We're gonna make history. I nodded. His touch was warm, but I couldn't feel it. Later that night, I stared at the ceiling. The silence of the apartment felt sharp, like a blade. Damon shifted beside me, already asleep. I turned toward the window. Moonlight spilled across the floor. Cold, still. I whispered the same words again and again. Don't flinch. Don't fold. Not this time. The next day, Damon changed. Subtle at first. Shorter answers. Longer silences. His eyes lingered on my phone when I texted. At lunch, he set down his fork, mid-bite. We need to talk, he said. My heart skipped. But I nodded calmly. Okay. He leaned in, lowered his voice. I feel like you've been pulling away. I blinked. What do you mean? He exhaled. Looked out the window, then turned back. This deal matters. The company. Us. But if you don't trust me, he paused. Then delivered the line like a weapon. Maybe we should cancel the wedding. Silence. Long. Cold. I kept my face still. Inside, alarm screamed. Outside, I looked down at my hands, then nodded slowly. I get it. He looked surprised. You do. I let my shoulders sag. I've just been scared. This is everything I've ever built. And now it's not just mine anymore. I saw it. That flicker of relief in his eyes. He thought I was softening, breaking. I reached for his hand, held it gently. Maybe I just need to trust you more. He smiled, pulled me into a hug, the way he used to, But I didn't hug back. Not fully, not anymore. That night while he slept, I got to work. Laptop open, VPN on. I rerouted our domain, reset admin permissions, moved all backend access from the shared company Gmail to a cold storage server in my name only. I documented every click. Screenshots, audit logs. Lena had prepped the full file. By morning, even if Damon tried to sell the tech, he wouldn't be able to touch the infrastructure. I tucked the hard drive into a book safe behind my parents' wedding photo. Then I lay down next to him, listened to him breathe, steady, trusting, the way I used to. I turned away from him and smiled. The engagement party was held on a rooftop in downtown San Jose. String lights, jazz trio, waiters in all black. Damon loved grand. He greeted guests like a CEO on stage. Perfect smile, shoulder pats, whispered promises. I wore white, not bridal, but sharp enough to look expensive. People told me I was glowing. I smiled. Inside, I burned. I spotted Halcyon's senior partner near the bar, Eric DeLeon. Again. Laughing with a glass of scotch, unaware I'd seen the real pitch 2 weeks ago. Damon stood at the center of the room, tapping his glass. The chatter quieted. "Thank you all for coming," he said. "I know tonight's about love, but I want to share something else. Something big." He gestured toward the screen behind him. A logo appeared. Carelytics. Clean. Powerful. He turned to me. "Natalie's genius made this company possible. And together we're taking it further." I tilted my head, smiled softly. Let him continue. "We finalized a deal that will push Carelytics into global markets, $500 million in expansion capital." Gasps, applause. He raised his glass. "To the future," then paused. "Nat, would you like to say something?" I stepped forward, took the mic, felt its cold weight in my hand. "Yes," I said, smile still in place. "I'd like to share something too." I nodded to the tech assistant by the screen. He hesitated, then clicked. The logo disappeared. A document filled the screen. Legal header, bolded stamp. Notice of freeze order signed by me, notarized, dated. I turned to the crowd. "This deal is not finalized," I said clearly. And under Clause 12, 3 no-founder shares can be transferred without joint consent. Gasps again, this time sharper. I turned to Damon. His smile was gone. Completely. "What did you do?" he whispered. I leaned close. "Stopped you." His hand trembled. He looked around. At the investors. At Eric. Then back at me. "You blindsided me." "No," I said, voice steady. "You buried me first." Pause. The room was silent. I handed the mic back, then walked off stage. Every eye followed. Every lie he'd built cracking beneath the lights. Damon didn't move. His hand was still halfway raised, like he'd frozen mid-toast. The champagne glass tipped slightly. A few drops spilled onto his cuff. He blinked once, then again. His jaw twitched. "What the hell did you just do?" he whispered. The crowd had gone silent. Only the hum of the rooftop heaters filled the space. Someone's phone buzzed, unanswered. I didn't flinch. I looked him dead in the eye. I stopped a $500 million mistake. He took a slow step forward. "You humiliated me, in front of everyone." "No," I said. "You did that to yourself." He laughed. "Once. Sharp. You think you're smart. You just burned every bridge in this city." Eric DeLeon stepped forward. His face had gone pale. "Damon," he said quietly. "Did you know she hadn't consented?" Damon's smile faltered. "She's confused." I explained everything. "You lied," I cut in. I turned to Eric. "I sent a certified letter to your legal team this morning, time-stamped. You received it before this event began." Gasps. Again. Eric looked down at his phone, swiped, then lifted his eyes. "She's right." Damon's face cracked. Barely, but enough. Someone in the crowd muttered, "Jesus." Another, "He tried to sell without her." The murmurs grew louder. Damon stepped back. His hands clenched. "Natalie, you tried to erase me," I said. "In my own company, after everything I built. Everything I gave." He shook his head, voice low. "You're making a mistake." "No," I said. "I'm finally not." Lena appeared by my side, like she'd been waiting for this moment. She handed Damon a thin white envelope. He didn't take it. So she dropped it on the floor between us. "It's official," she said. "Effective immediately, your access is revoked. Email, IP, account control." Damon stared at the envelope, then at me. "You don't have the right." "We do," Lena said. "You signed a limited operating agreement. We filed everything through the state registrar this morning." My hands trembled slightly, but I kept them at my sides, palms open. He turned, faced the crowd. "You're going to believe her," Eric didn't answer. But others began to walk away, quiet, sharp, one by one. Investors, friends, colleagues, gone. 3 days later, the whispers started. At first they were small. A Reddit thread, then an anonymous Twitter post, accusing me of embezzling company funds. The headline, "Female Tech CEO Caught Hiding Millions Before IPO," the photo me. At the engagement party, smiling, I stared at the screen, jaw clenched. My pulse roared in my ears. Rachel, my assistant, walked into my office. "You've seen it?" she asked, voice low. I nodded. Her eyes burned. "They're saying you funneled money into a shell company, that you hid it from the board." I took a breath. Cold, shallow. "Damon." She didn't answer. She didn't have to. I called Lena. "I need you at the office. Now." She arrived 20 minutes later. Slick ponytail, no smile. She dropped a manila folder on my desk. I already drafted the cease and desist. "And if he doesn't?" I asked. Her eyes narrowed. "Then we go nuclear." I didn't sleep that night. Emails, phone calls, damage control. Every time I blinked, I saw his smirk. Every time I breathed, I remembered the words, "She always folds under pressure." Not this time. 2 days later, we filed a defamation suit. Attached to it, proof of altered emails, timeline of false accusations, forensic audit. The response came within hours. His lawyer requested a meeting. I declined. Let them sweat. The board called an emergency session, 6 hours, closed door, then a vote. Damon Reynolds removed from all current and future operations. No severance, no equity. The message went out in an all-staff email. I watched the cursor blink on my screen. Then I clicked send. His name gone. That night I walked alone. Down University Avenue. No makeup, no heels, just me. The air smelled like cold asphalt and rain. I passed 2 people whispering near the corner. They didn't look at me, but I knew. Everyone knew. Damon's story was out. His schemes, his lies, and mine, the truth. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt empty, but also clean. Like I'd scrubbed out something rotting. I sat on a bench outside our old co-working space. My phone buzzed. Lena. Her message boards filed to reverse the original co-founder registration. You'll stand as sole founder. Again, I stared at the screen. Then typed back. Not again. Still. I put the phone away. And finally, let myself breathe. 1 week later, I changed the nameplate on the office door. Just mine, no one else's. The sky over Palo Alto was clear that morning. Cold, blue. Inside, my team clapped. Not loudly, but long enough. Lena handed me a coffee. Extra strong, like your new signature. I smiled. Small, tired, real. Damon had gone quiet. No lawsuits, no press, just silence. But his echo still lingered. Some scars don't scream, they hum. I stood by the window and watched the light pour across the desks. We were still here. So was I. Not broken, just rebuilt. People ask if I'd do it all again. Fall in love, let him in. The truth, I don't know, but I know this: I'd never hand over the keys to my life again. Not for love, not for comfort, not for anyone. Trust is earned, and boundaries. They're not walls, they're doors with locks you choose to open. I almost let someone steal my future because I wanted to believe the best in him. That was the cost. And this is the lesson. Where are you listening from tonight? Have you ever faced betrayal from someone you trusted most? Drop your story and hit subscribe if you believe power belongs to the prepared. The world won't hand you protection. You have to build it yourself, piece by piece, word by word, signature by signature. I did, and I'm still standing.